Chapter 8 Nichols. In the Gifts of Christmas study, children approached Santa Claus in groups of 2 and were asked a question. They were then given an opportunity to divide the chocolate among themselves. One was a large chocolate bar, the size of an adult hand, and the other small, about the size of a thumb. When children were asked, "What do you like to get for Christmas?" 73% chose the large chocolate for themselves. But when asked, "What do you like to give for Christmas?" 50% more of the children chose the large chocolate for the other child. The change of a single word altered their perspectives and then transformed behavior. If this is achievable with a single sentence, we can begin to see how skyfall events take place over the course of an hour. William Stevenson, The Nature of Skyfall Events. Porto, Portugal, October 1988. Blood crusted over Nichols' ear. A few dry drops dotted his neck and shirt. He reached up to feel it again and make sure the bleeding stopped. It still stung. He gingerly slid his thumb over the cut as someone bumped into him. The impact jabbed his hand into the wound, and blood leaked out again. Damn it! Nichols glanced over his shoulder as the stranger continued down the street. Stevenson paused and inspected the ear. "You'll be all right. We're at the hotel anyway. You can take care of it here." He opened the glass door, and his shoes clacked against the marble floor as he headed to his room. In the lobby restaurant sat Silas, carving into a steak. He waved Nichols over. 2 other men were at the table. A bald man who seemed to be in his 40s smoked a cigarette. The other appeared to have been plucked from the beaches of California. His uneven, sun-bleached hair teased his shoulders, and his eyes were bloodshot, as though he were drunk or high. Nichols pulled up an extra chair to join them. He extended his hand to the surfer. "I'm Jay Nichols." Casey laughed. "Check this dude out." He smirked and hitched his thumb. "All business." His hair swayed as he pointed at Jones. "He must be one of yours." Silas lapped at the sauce glazing his lips, flicking some of it down his chin. "Shut up, Casey. You're too incoherent for conversation." "Screw you!" The surfer's voice took on an edge. "I don't even know why I'm here." He stood and headed for the door. "Gotta find a nightclub or something." He paused and checked his pockets before doubling back. He leaned down closer to Silas. "You got any money?" Silas pulled a few bills from his suit and placed them on the table. Casey snatched it up and left. Jones took a drag on his cigarette. His eyes stayed fixed on something outside the window as he spoke. "We've met before. I don't know if you remember, but I asked you not to publish a paper." He pivoted his head away from the table as he exhaled a stream of smoke. "I do. Not a forgettable moment in my life." Nichols shook his hand, then took a seat. Silas slashed through another part of the steak and took a bite. "So, now you've seen it. Now you've met him. Now you are beginning to understand?" "Yes," Nichols nodded. "What did you think of Stevenson?" Silas asked. "Not what you were expecting?" "No, he would—" "Of course not." Silas gestured to the waiter to refill his wineglass. "People expect to meet the soldier, but instead they find a teacher." He sipped at the red liquid. "He did his time in the field like anyone, but he spent most of the Second War masterminding plots, developing new techniques, and teaching new spies." The meat spilled blood onto the plate as Silas cut into it. "It's something you want to exploit as you work with him." Nichols narrowed his eyebrows. "Why would I want to exploit anything?" Jones held up his hand for silence from Silas. "Because he keeps secrets from us. We're allowed to have someone work side by side with him, but he doesn't share what he learns. In fact, everything he gathers, he codes in a book, so no one can read it. We believe that if you create a teacher-student relationship with him, he might let something leak out, his years of being an educator getting the best of him, Silas said. That's your plan? It doesn't sound well thought out, Nichols chuckled. Habit is a powerful thing. Jones tapped ash from his cigarette. Besides, that's only your part. We do our investigation. We gather our own data. He cleared his throat. And you figure out what he's collecting. A wet trickle of blood rolled down Nichols' neck. He picked up a napkin and dabbed at it. What happened? Jones asked. I caught it on a piece of glass at the broadcast station. Jones leaned over to examine the injury. You should have Alice take a look at that. Silas cocked an eyebrow. You want him to meet your monster already? I don't think he's prepared. Half monster, Jones corrected. And yes, I think there would be no better time than now. She likes broken things. He rose from the table. Nichols held up a finger. You said Stevenson wanted to convince me of something, but you never told me what. Neither has he. The man is a Luddite. Silas speared a piece of fatty meat and tossed it into his mouth. He continued to chew as he spoke. He doesn't understand. You can't stop an idea once its time has come. He grimaced and spat the uneaten fat back onto the plate. Consider this. Tesla and Marconi filed patents for the radio within a week of each other. Anesthetic was developed by 3 different people across the United States in the same year. No one can stop an idea whose time has come, not even Stevenson. Stop an idea? You mean he wants to stop Skyfall events? Nichols' eyes darted between his colleagues' faces to check his accuracy. From ever happening again, yes, Jones said. Nichols swallowed. So if he gets what he wants, then the weapon you promised the CIA will simply evaporate. Silas lifted his hands and pantomimed something disappearing. But you just said no one could stop an idea. If that's right, then you don't have to worry. He paused. I mean, we don't. The axiom isn't exactly correct. Jones's shoulders tensed, and he bit the filter of his cigarette. There are a lot of ideas that have been stopped throughout human history. Monarchies are all but dead. Sure, there are a few holdouts, but they are rare. He crossed his arms. The point is this. A very small possibility exists that he can stop them. He took in a deep breath. Permanently. Silas sipped at his wine. Let's be honest. It's not the weapon we're worried about losing. It's the control. The infinite possibilities when we can do more than just create them, but control the beliefs they instill in people. He gestured to the scene outside. Unclaimed cars still littered the roadway. Human refuse, clothing, and food jumbled the streets. A few store windows were broken. This chaos, this destruction is just mold on an orange. But once we understand it, can control it, we will have penicillin, and the world will never be the same. Nichols' ear dripped blood onto the table. He picked up the napkin and held it to the wound. Come on. Jones stood and gestured for them to leave. Let's get that taken care of. The 2 men climbed the stairs to a row of identical wooden doors. Bright lights reflected from the polish. The hallway smelled chemical clean. Jones stopped and knocked on the door. A pretty, almost elfish girl answered in a sleek, tight-fitting red dress. She worked at putting in a golden earring. Alice, this is Nichols. He could use your help. Jones gestured for the injured man to enter. Why's he bleeding? The girl craned her neck and drew his eyes into hers. Her eyelashes were long and dark with makeup. Alice gazed, and she blinked slowly, giving a Hollywood movie-like appearance of someone deliberately batting their eyes. That's a question for you, too. Nichols' eyes lingered on her ocean blue irises. Her teeth, aligned and white, contrasted her tan skin. Caught it on a piece of glass. Jones pressed the door completely open and ushered Nichols inside. Small, soft fingers touched Nichols' hand as Alice guided him out of the entrance. The room seemed to be in the midst of being searched for drugs. Blankets were tossed everywhere. The lamps and the TV were tipped over and lying on the floor. A trail of cold cereal led from the bathroom to one of the beds. As Nichols stepped inside, the scent of sweet perfume swirled in the air. It fought with the smell of greasy chicken that saturated the rest of the area. His foot caught on a tiny pair of jeans sprawled on the floor tiles. Jones examined the room. His jaw clenched, and he drummed his fingers on the wall. He picked up a large hand mirror from a heap of clothes, then spoke slowly and methodically. "What did you do to your room?" "It came like this," Alice said cheerfully, then stuck her tongue out at him. She sat on the bed, still guiding Nichols by his hand, and pulled a plastic first aid kit from the nightstand. "Never mind." Jones shook his head. He took 3 long strides across the room and set the hand mirror on the dresser. "I can't be around your chaos." He darted out the door. Nichols looked around the room. What did happen? Alice unraveled a spool of gauze, clipped it with scissors, and soaked up the blood from Nichols' ear. "Rough first day, huh?" She patted him on the knee. "I didn't want the police to see what I was doing, so I rushed it." "Did you get anything good? Like a finger?" She raised her eyebrows. Nichols jerked away and stared at her. "A what?" "I like fingers. They have fingerprints." She tapped his nose. A faint stench of cigarette smoke mingled with the scents of the room. Nichols glanced toward the mirror sitting on the dresser. It reflected an image of Jones smoking in the hall. She poured an antibiotic gel into her fingers and rubbed the injured part of Nichols' ear. Her long red nails tickled his skin and brushed his hair. When she finished, she blew softly to dry the gel. "What'd you say happened in here?" She giggled. "Sometimes I like to turn off the light, just throw things around, so it's a surprise when I see it again." Nichols furrowed his brow. That makes no sense, regardless of personality. His eyes scanned the room. "But it's easier to hide things in a mess. A message rolled up in a pocket or stuffed in a sleeve would be harder to find in her creation. If she worried about someone searching her room, this would give them pause. It's easy to put things back in order, but to keep a mess the same would be difficult." Alice laughed and pulled out a needle and medical thread. "That would be silly, wouldn't it?" She leaned in and placed her hand on his chest. "You have soft skin." As she spoke, Nichols felt her lips brushing against his ear. Her hand, her lips, it was all very stimulating. He closed his eyes. "That's not going to leave much of a scar. Not much a story there." She stroked her hand down his shoulder, across his chest, stomach, and then to his belt. She tugged his shirt up, exposing the skin of his belly. The sensation of cold metal against his skin refocused Nichols. His eyes shot open. Alice was holding a sharp pair of scissors against his abdomen. Jerking back, Nichols grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "I could give you a real good scar right here." She pushed the scissors forward, fighting against him. "You'd be okay, you know. I'd sew you up after." She tilted her head back away from his ear and looked up at him and fluttered her eyelashes. Nichols grabbed Alice and slammed her against the bed. He pressed both her arms to her chest. She kicked at him, trying to break free enough to drive her knee into his groin. He pushed down harder, and her face went white. He thought he heard the last gasp of air being forced out of her. Her expression changed, the lips pulled tight. He saw the panic sweep over her. He stepped back and hurled her onto the far side of the bed. "I'm out of here." He bolted for the door. In the hall, Jones leaned against a freestanding pillar, smoking long, thick puffs. He gandered up nonchalantly, removed the cigarette from his mouth, and offered it. "She's goddamn crazy!" Nichols pointed back at the room. "Nah." Jones waited a moment for his fellow agent to take the cigarette. Nichols didn't, so Jones started smoking again. "Didn't you see her dress? No way she'd get blood on that thing. She enjoys mind games. You gotta pay attention to the details." "That's why you sent me in there?" Nichols' tone rose to a sharp edge. "So she could play with me?" "Nope." Jones took a lengthy drag. "I wanted her to like you." He extinguished his cigarette in a nearby plant pot. "You should get some rest. We've got a long day tomorrow." Nichols's jaw slacked. "What the hell is going on?" "You're meeting the team. They're a little weird, but they get things done." Jones stretched. "You should try smoking. It'll help you relax." "This is madness." Nichols' eyes widened. "These are the people I work with?" "Don't be such a drama queen. Either one of them would have your back in a shootout. Hell, make good friends with Alice, and she'll kill anyone who gives you a hard time just for fun." She emerged from her room, fully dressed and stunning in a pair of crimson-spiked heels that matched her lips. She glanced over at Nichols and Jones, winked, and headed for the lobby stairs. "Got a date?" Jones called after her. "Yeah, big one, too," she smiled. Nichols shifted his eyes back and forth between Alice and Jones in disbelief. From the corner of his eye, Jones caught the expression. "It's not a real date. She's going to steal his wallet." "What? She's insane!" Nichols grabbed a tuft of his own hair and shook his head. "I can't process it." Alice tossed her hair over her shoulder flirtatiously and laughed. "Think about it. When we finish dinner, and he goes to pay, only to find he has no wallet, then he, this big, muscular man, will have to turn to me, little Alice, who everyone thinks needs protecting, and he will have to ask for my help. He will need me to save him." She laughed again. "I love it." An understanding took place in Nichols as he listened to her unfurl her plans. Alice needed people to need her, needed them to turn to her for help, for saving. That's why Jones sent him to Alice for the injury. She was, no doubt, crazy, but her first interaction with Nichols would be him needing her help. She wouldn't have to create an incident. She would like him from the very beginning. Alice disappeared down the stairs. "Come on." Jones walked towards another hotel room. "I got something I want to show you." Nichols followed. Sitting on a desk next to the bed was a thick manuscript. The title was unreadable. He flipped through a few pages. It all read like nonsense. Every word was in English, but the sentences were unconnected. "What is this?" "The Nature of Skyfall Events," by William Stevenson.